A drug-crazed, murderous warlord has captured 11 peacekeeping soldiers.
He was a paranoid schizophrenic, mad, basically.
An elite special forces unit is mobilized.
These guys are united in the ability to just keep going when the going is hellish.
A daring and dangerous plan is drawn up.
The odds were against us, totally.
As executions are threatened, the special forces explode into action. They are outnumbered 5 to 1. They are outgunned with heavy artillery, and their enemy believes in black magic. Now on Black Ops, go behind the scenes on a mission so dangerous, they call it Operation Certain Death. August 2000, Sierra Leone, a small war-torn nation on the West African coast. For almost a decade, a loose alliance of murderous rebel gangs has been fighting for control of the country. Their leaders are driven by the prospect of fabulous wealth. This is the world's center of the trade in illegal blood diamonds.
Blood diamonds have become an extraordinarily important factor in the violence which was going on.
There are daily raids on undefended rural villages. The rebels often take all the children away, turning them into child soldiers. Those left behind were often punished by amputation.
They would chop arms off short sleeve or long sleeve style. So short sleeve was above the elbow, long sleeve was below the elbow. The aim of doing so was to spread terror across the country in some strange way to prove their power.
One of the most brutal of these gangs is a group of about 1,000 fighters known as the Westside Boys.
The Westside Boys, drugs and alcohol, that's how they fueled their war.
They were rounding up local women. There's little doubt that sex and drugs featured quite prominently in their behaviour and activities. So they were a dangerous group of people simply because they were totally unpredictable.
If that wasn't bad enough, they had this belief that voodoo would protect them to such an extent it would make them bulletproof.
One man who served nearly 2 years with the Westside Boys is 26-year-old Black Zorro. He was recruited by the rebels, aged just 14, and rose to become a trusted junior officer.
Well, the smoke, the weed.
Well, we used to smoke plenty of marijuana. And as for drink, we had lots of homemade strong alcohol called hard wine. Cocaine was sometimes available, but heroin was all over the place. If you went to the jungle at that time, you would find everybody high on heroin. I was often high all day. The drugs made me feel strong and ready for battle. As soon as I took them, I was ready for any fight.
To save Sierra Leone from total collapse, a global coalition intervenes with military force. British troops in particular play a leading role in keeping the peace and in training the local army to stand on its own.
We were demonstrating a wider commitment of the Western world to what at the time was a struggling democracy in a very poor part of Africa. So I think there was an important symbolic value in our intervention.
On a quiet Friday afternoon, 11 military training advisors from Britain's Royal Irish Regiment set out on a routine patrol. At this junction, their commander, Major Alan Marshall, decides to turn down a dirt road leading into the jungle. He's heading straight into the heart of Westside Boys territory.
I don't know why they left the main road and came into our territory. It was a no-go zone for anybody except us.
The unofficial reason may be that he was actually there with a mission to try and scope out what their forces were like, how powerful they were, what weapons they were armed with, and what they would be like as a fighting force to come up against.
The British don't realise they've already been spotted by Westside Boys scouts hiding in the forest.
We saw them as a major threat. They came to our camp without authorization. We didn't know their intentions, and we thought they were here to spy on us. So we couldn't just let them leave.
They reach the riverside, where one side of the rebel base is situated, and immediately they get there, they're surrounded by what can only be described as a seething, screaming mob of Westside Boys.
Heavily outnumbered and with no means of escape, the soldiers are forced to surrender.
It's very clear very quickly that this is not a friendly situation.
The well-trained, well-armed soldiers are taken prisoner by this crazed mob of drugged-out jungle gangsters.
We arrested the soldiers to get attention from the international community. We wanted to stop hiding in the jungle, and we thought we could use them to get what we wanted.
The 11 British soldiers are beaten, stripped of their valuables, and taken off to a stinking jungle hut. At the Ministry of Defence headquarters in London, news of the missing soldiers reaches Britain's Chief General.
We weren't quite sure just how serious it was to start with. I knew about the Westside Boys. I'd been to Sierra Leone, I'd been briefed about them, but I wasn't quite sure what they would do.
General Guthrie and Defence Secretary Hoon convene a crisis meeting in their Situation Room, deep in the basement.
Problem was, how were we going to get these people who'd been kidnapped, who were in tremendous danger of either being tortured, killed, or split up around Sierra Leone? So there was a real urgency about this.
They knew nothing. They had no intelligence, they had no eyes on the rebel base, they didn't know the rebel numbers, they didn't know what weaponry they had, and most worryingly of all, they didn't know whether the British soldiers would get killed in the rescue operation.
The British are haunted by the memory of a disastrous rescue mission in Africa 7 years earlier. This was the infamous Black Hawk Down incident. 18 American servicemen were killed when their helicopters were shot down by a rocket and their bodies paraded through the streets of Mogadishu, Somalia.
Obviously, reports are going to the Prime Minister. He would be briefed.
And I remember him saying, well, is this very dangerous? I said, yes, very dangerous. Are people likely to be killed? I said, almost certainly.
Terrified of the fallout from a failed rescue, the British government decides to try to negotiate for the hostages' release.
I was perfectly content for negotiations to be begun, but I have to say in the background as well, we were always preparing to take military action to release them.
If negotiations fail, there will be no choice but to take the hostages back by force. 3 days into the crisis, a team of specialist negotiators from Scotland Yard arrive in Africa. They will try to peacefully secure the hostages' release. Leading the talks on the rebels' side is their commander, a 24-year-old warlord calling himself Brigadier General Fode Calais.
Calais was paranoid schizophrenic. He was certainly very paranoid and very deluded.
Fode Calais was the best commander we had. He was a skilled soldier and he led from the front.
He was so deluded to the extent that he believed his rebel group had the power to, for example, force the British out of Sierra Leone.
Everybody
knew that when he gave orders, you had to follow them because he took responsibility for all his soldiers.
At his first meeting with the negotiators, Calais makes a rambling series of demands. These range from simply wanting an amnesty for the Westside Boys to outrageously insisting all British leave the country. Most insanely of all, Calais himself wants to be named president of Sierra Leone.
In some cases, it will be quite apparent from an early situation that the prospect of a successful negotiated solution with the victims coming out unharmed is low. That may be a factor of history of the group, the demands and the nature of the demands that are being made, the political ideology. It may be from a range of factors that you can make that judgment.
The negotiators are walking a dangerous tightrope. Calais' demands can never be met, but the team must make him believe they might. The hope is that as long as he keeps talking, the hostages will be kept alive.
Clearly they didn't wish to kill them at the outset, and they saw some value in them, and that's why they kept them alive. So that was the good news. The bad news in this situation is the unpredictability and the volatility. So in the blink of an eye, you can move from a situation where you have stable, well-treated hostages to them being killed.
To confirm that the hostages are being well treated, the negotiators insist on meeting with Major Marshall, the patrol leader, in person. Calais agrees. It's a decision he will come to regret.
Major Marshall, the man who was in charge of the British patrol, had been captured. He recognised in these meetings an opportunity to pass over some vital intelligence in a clandestine fashion to the British side.
The people who'd been abducted here were professional military people. They foresaw where this was going.
What he had done is, during the various walkabouts that the rebels had proudly given them of the base, saying, there is our anti-aircraft weapons and there are our mortars and these kind of things, during those walkabouts, Major Marshall had noted down every single defence that he could see. Back in their room, where they were locked in captivity, he had drawn up a detailed map of the rebel base, mapping out all the positions and all their strengths. And he'd taken that piece of paper, rolled it up very tightly, and poked it inside a pen lid.
When Major Marshall meets one of the men from Scotland Yard, they shake hands and make a secret exchange. If Calais spots what they are doing, it will be a disaster. But incredibly, the negotiator manages to put the object in his pocket without being noticed.
I wouldn't characterise these as a highly professional group of hostage takers. The fact that they allowed that handshake allowed an exchange of intelligence. That was not a shrewd move on their part.
It's an unexpected but crucial breakthrough. At last, the British have some intelligence to begin planning a rescue mission. And there is only one group that has skills to carry it out. Britain's legendary Special Forces unit, the SAS. They are the pioneers in the art of black ops, with a history stretching back as far as the Second World War.
The SAS, the British Special Air Services, they're the special operations force that we modeled all of our special operations after. They set the model for the rest of us to follow.
Through the years, they have constantly adapted and improved, playing a crucial role in every major British conflict, from the streets of Northern Ireland, to the polar wastes of the Falkland Islands, to the deserts of Iraq. The SAS are famous for being ready to fight in any environment and to carry out the missions with absolute secrecy.
Go! Go, go, go!
Small unit, just a few hundred people, the elite of the elite. They have to go through a brutal entry course to prove that they measure up. It washes the majority of the applicants out.
Those that make it through the infamous selection procedure are honoured by having the SAS wings and dagger pinned or badged to their army berets.
I joined the army to be a soldier and take up the duties that includes. And as a badged member of the SAS, that is about as pure as the driven snow as you can get in terms of soldiering.
The SAS have two particular specialities. One is storming difficult targets. In London, in 1980, they famously rescued 19 hostages, breaking a terrorist siege of the Iranian embassy.
The SAS pioneered the art of bursting onto a scene and rescuing hostages. That means things like fast roping from helicopters, breaching doors, throwing in a stun grenade to stun everyone inside, and then quickly firing and taking all of the hostile parties out, leaving the civilians. That is what they perfected.
The training for releasing hostages is quite intense, as you can imagine, because there's not a lot of room for error. You know, you don't get second chances when you're dealing with people's lives.
They don't have all the special gear that the Americans have. What the SAS guys will tell you is, yes, what we lack in gear, we have to make up for in skills.
Their other great skill is jungle warfare.
Jungle warfare is, in many people's eyes, one of the purest forms of fighting. You've got to really get attuned in with your surroundings. There's no open spaces, it's closed in, it's a tight environment, so it's on top of you.
Now the unit was preparing to put both of these specialities into practice and start planning an audacious rescue using the smuggled map. The crisis has been dragging on for almost 7 days, but the negotiators continue to try and seek a peaceful settlement. Calais is now asking for something more reasonable, some medicine for his camp, and a satellite telephone so he can call the BBC and announce his grievances to the world. The British quickly agree if they can have some of the hostages in return.
There was a major negotiating success. 5 hostages were released in exchange for a satellite phone and medicines. Now, that was a win-win situation because, one, it's worthwhile having effective and good communications, with the hostile elements. 2, medicines are a good idea, particularly if they're going to be used to treat any of your individuals. And 3, it provides intelligence opportunity.
It's a masterstroke, which will change the course of the operation. Almost half of the men are now free. What's more, the British can use the signal from the satellite phone to pinpoint Calais' secret hideout. Unknown to him or anyone outside a select inner circle, a task force has arrived in Sierra Leone to begin secret preparations for a rescue. It consists of about 300 men. Most are from Britain's frontline airborne force, the Parachute Regiment, known to all in the British Army as simply the Baras. But they are merely there as support troops. The rescue itself will be handled by a 50-strong team from the elite Special Air Service, the SAS, and about 20 colleagues from the British Royal Navy's own Special Forces unit, the SBS, or Special Boat Service. To avoid arousing any suspicion, their mission is given an innocuous code name, Operation Baras.
I'm often asked, how on earth does Britain choose these rather curious names for its operation, in contrast to the United States that talks about Operation Freedom and has rather dramatic names for their military activities. And the answer is, I'm afraid, rather prosaic and probably very British, which is that we allow a computer to generate randomly names that are then, provided they're appropriate, allocated accordingly.
With the tacit support of the Sierra Leone government, the men of Operation Baras establish a covert base just outside the capital.
It wasn't until that we moved forward into Sierra Leone itself that the focus starts coming down. Then you start thinking, right, this is going to happen. Your kit's being packed as to what you want to take in with you. You're beginning to get a bit more intelligence. Briefing boards are going up. We need to be ready for it.
The SAS start gathering as much intelligence as they can about the rebels and their jungle hideout. Their preferred plan is to send a small team upriver at night in SBS boats. Moving in total darkness and total silence, the rescue team can secretly enter the rebel camp, sneak into the hostage hut, and quickly escape with the prisoners. hopefully without a shot being fired. As the troops wait for the green light, they begin rehearsing for the mission.
There was a floor plan built at the village so that you knew roughly how far you had to go, what your limits of your particular arcs were and that sort of stuff. An arc being where you can fire and where you can't fire. At the height of battle, it could become quite confusing as to who's where and who's doing what.
But there is still no permission to mount the rescue. The final go can only come from Defence Secretary Jeff Hoon in London. The fate of the 6 remaining British hostages hangs in the balance. If a bargain cannot be struck for their lives, there will be an epic battle to free them.
The Brits were cocky. We would give them orders and they would say, no, we won't accept your command. They were extremely stubborn, actually. Sometimes we would talk to them, tell them what to do, and they would ignore us. They really did not make life easy for themselves. Sometimes Calais would have to slap them around a bit to make them understand. He would shake them up and hit them hard. He had to treat them roughly, so they knew he was in charge.
The key thing would be reading the mood music, you know, whether it was positive or it's negative, you know, in terms of their attitude, because the volatility is the key element in this, and whether they're going to behave in a rational and thoughtful sort of way, or whether they're escalating to a point where it's clearly never going to be resolved, you know, amicably.
Defence Secretary Jeff Hoon has still not authorised a full-scale rescue mission. But he has given the go-ahead for a secretive and highly dangerous operation. A 4-man SAS surveillance team stealthily enters the jungle. Their job is to provide more detailed intelligence about conditions in the rebel base.
In the first place, they had to be inserted around the village. Actually, it meant that some of them spent several days in swamp, crawling through some of the most unpleasant conditions I think anyone could face.
Moving and operating in total silence and advancing just a few feet each hour, the men slowly approach rebel territory, looking for a concealed position where they can see, but not be seen.
That team was tasked with setting up an observation post, an OP. An OP, it's like a grave dug in the jungle floor.
They know how to quietly get into a scene if necessary, whether it's marching into a jungle invisibly and sitting in an observation post under a tarp for 3 weeks, staring at a target so nobody knows they're there. That's what they do.
You dig a pit, you jump in the pit, you cover it with vegetation, and you lie there for as long as it takes to keep eyes on the base until either the mission is called in, and it happens, or the mission's called off and you withdraw.
This kind of surveillance is another SAS speciality, and it takes incredible reserves of patience and skill. The men must eat, sleep, and maintain their watch for days on end, making only the smallest of movements.
Throughout the special operations world, they have this expression, the quiet professionals. And these guys, when they're out on the mission, that's really what they are.
Straight away, they discover 3 pieces of bad news. Firstly, the captives are no longer in the rebel base where they were first taken hostage. They have been moved across a wide river to a smaller camp, even deeper into the jungle. Second, the original plan for the assault along the river will not work. It is full of concealed sandbanks, and the Special Forces boats cannot use it. On top of that, the jungle is so thick that an approach by land is also impossible. The only option is a full frontal assault by helicopter.
If we'd have sneaked up and not fired a shot, taken everybody down without killing anybody, then that would have been the preferred option. As it was, it couldn't pan out that way. We couldn't get to them. We couldn't do it that way. So, you know, we had to go in and give them a bloody nose.
The only helicopter up to the job is one of the biggest in the world. The twin-rotor HC-2 Chinook. But an air assault using one of these beasts has its own specific problems.
Well, the obvious thing about a helicopter is that they are very noisy, and the element of surprise is lost if the enemy can hear a helicopter coming at distance.
Chinooks can carry a huge payload, but they're also slow, hard to maneuver, and easy to spot. Hence their unofficial nickname, the Flying School Bus.
If a Chinook gets hit and knocked out of the sky with a large number of SAS people in it, it would be very serious.
To make matters worse, most of the Westside Boys group remain in their main base on the south side of the river. They have a battery of heavy weapons, including rocket-propelled grenades, heavy machine guns, and mortars, any of which could easily shoot a Chinook out of the sky or rain artillery fire down on the hostage camp across the river. Any rescue mission would quickly turn into a suicide mission. The SAS commanders must rethink the entire operation. Time is running out. Rebel leader Fode Calais is getting more and more impatient with the endless rounds of negotiations.
It could change in the blink of an eye. It was highly unpredictable, highly volatile, and groups like this had already killed many times before. Even if they were compliant today, you could not in any way be assured of the safety of the hostages tomorrow or the day after.
The negotiators from Scotland Yard call Calais daily on his satellite phone. But with each conversation, he becomes more unpredictable. He is spending his days taking drugs and drinking heavily. By the start of every afternoon, he is thoroughly drunk. Eventually, due to the lack of electricity in his camp, Calais' phone runs out of battery and goes dead.
We had a message saying negotiations had failed.
The safety of the hostages is now at serious risk.
One evening, he called us all out and said, "We're going to shoot one of them."
He took Major Marshall, the British commander, to the edge of the jungle, made him kneel. They put an assault rifle to his head and basically pulled the trigger.
Calais' rifle is empty. But next time, in all likelihood, it will be loaded. When news of this outrage arrives in London, Jeff Hoon decides that the time for talking is finally over.
We were certainly receiving very detailed information about what was going on inside the huts where our men were being held prisoner. And I think one of the key pieces of information I received is that they were being subject to mock executions, that weapons were being pointed at them, apparently being fired. And that kind of behavior was totally unacceptable as far as I was concerned.
Operation Baras is a go.
Well, the SAS, I think everybody in the army would admit, are probably the most suitable people to do this. They are trained in special operations. They're trained in rescuing people who have been kidnapped. They've done it in other places.
Everyone involved in the mission knows the odds are stacked heavily against them. In fact, the mission is so dangerous, the men on the ground have given it their own name.
When they realised they could only go in via air, that was when the men of the SAS, the men who were tasked to go in and do this hostage rescue, coined the phrase, the nickname for the mission, Operation Certain Death.
Assuming they even make it to their target without being shot out of the sky, the rescue force will be outnumbered more than 5 to 1. And their enemy, who believe black magic makes them invincible to bullets, will fight fearlessly and recklessly.
In a battle, you don't check to see who you've killed. When I fire my weapon, there will be many victims. I don't know who is dead or alive. All I know is when I pull the trigger, the bullets will be flying around the jungle, and no one will be left in front of me.
The men of Operation Baras are assembling before dawn to launch their attack, a dangerous air assault on a well-defended jungle hideout. The mission will be personally overseen by General Charles Guthrie, one-time commander of the SAS, now head of all Britain's armed forces.
We had a very good plan, but it was a risky plan, because in these things you never quite know what the enemy are going to do.
Guthrie makes things plain to his political masters. The mission to rescue 6 British hostages is likely to incur heavy casualties.
General Guthrie made clear that this operation was not without risk, that he could not guarantee that we would not lose soldiers in the process.
In an attempt to overcome the staggering odds facing the rescue team, General Guthrie signs off on a new strategy: 2 simultaneous attacks. First, a team of about 50 elite SAS troops will approach the small jungle camp on the north bank, Gaberi Bana. This is where the captives are located, along with rebel commander Fode Calais. To surprise the rebels, they will fast rope down from the hovering choppers, landing just feet from the hostage hut.
We didn't know what to expect, so all the time that we know where the hostages are is the time that we have to act in, because if they take them somewhere else, it's jungle for jungle for jungle.
At the same time, the force of 150 paratroopers, who have been waiting in reserve, will launch the second attack. Landing by helicopter on the south side of the river, they will strike at the main Westside Boys base, Magbeni, to distract the large force of rebels there and disable their heavy weaponry. The mission is planned for dawn on the 8th of September, the 15th day of the crisis. But at the very last moment, there's a hitch. The SAS observation team, hiding in the jungle, sends an urgent message.
The mission was originally planned for first light on a Saturday morning, but in fact those who had been literally crawling through swamp in order to get near to the huts and near to the village took longer than they had planned.
The plan requires the observation team to move within a few feet of the hostage house to provide covering fire, but they must move at night, at an agonizingly slow pace, to avoid being spotted. They ask for a 24-hour delay.
Because of the time it took to get into position, it actually was delayed until Sunday morning.
Nights before the attack,
The night before the attack, everybody was out of it. We had all been partying. I was in my hut taking lots of drugs because it was raining outside. We had no idea what was about to happen.
One day later, Operation Certain Death finally lifts off. They fly out to sea and muster off the coast.
I don't think there was a guy there that didn't leave a letter with one of his best mates to give to his loved ones should something happen.
At the Ministry of Defence headquarters in London, all that Jeff Hoon can do now is wait and hope.
I think it's important to bear in mind that we were not sitting watching live TV footage of what was taking place. Essentially, I knew that the operation was underway. I knew that the operation would proceed along the lines that had been briefed to me.
2 Chinook helicopters are carrying the 50-strong SAS contingent, followed by a third with the first wave of support troops from the Baras. Each SAS man is carrying more than 80 pounds of kit, including his body armor, his M14 assault rifle, and enough ammunition and grenades for hours of fighting.
You know your job inside out by then, so you know what your mate's going to be doing, you know where he's going when he gets off the chopper, you know what you're going to do if he doesn't manage to go that way. The plan's in your face now, it's stored up here, you know, you're just waiting for that ramp to come down now and you're off.
On operations, you get psyched up. There's no question about that. Everybody wants it. I mean, you get a sort of... working together, cooperation, which is quite difficult to explain because it's extraordinarily dangerous what you're doing. But, you know, well-trained soldiers get on and do it.
After a 10-minute flight, the 6 helicopters are on the final approach to their targets.
The 4-man observation team were in contact with the pilots and telling them, you can come in, there's no one moving, it's light enough to see, it's light enough to see. And so the airborne assault force flew up to the rebel base using the river upon which the rebel base was situated to hide their progress as they came in. So the helicopters were invisible to the naked eye, but far more importantly, you couldn't hear them because the jungle to either side of the river masked the approach of the assault.
At 6:30 in the morning, the thunderous noise overhead rouses the rebels.
Early in the morning, I stepped outside my hut, and as I was looking around, I heard a strange sound. I turned to see a huge helicopter coming in. Then men started to drop down from ropes onto the ground. By now, the helicopter was overhead, making a huge wind. I was scared.
The most urgent objective is the hostage hunt. The entire operation hinges on getting to the captive soldiers before rebels get there first and execute them. It is now that the reconnaissance team, who have been lying almost motionless for a week in the jungle, finally break cover. Just in time to kill the rebels guarding the hostage hut.
They fight their way in there and they scream out, British soldiers, British soldiers!
British soldiers!
And so the hostages know it's the friendly force coming to rescue them that they've been dreaming of happening for some time.
Across the river in the main rebel stronghold of Magbeni, the support force from the Parachute Regiment is slowly approaching their target. Their mission is to prevent the core group of Westside Boys interfering with the rescue.
Operations nearly always have unforeseen consequences, and you've got to be aware of that and be prepared to react.
Chinook comes in, hovers over this flat area of ground. First guy jumps out, first para jumps out with his weapons and his Bergen on his back, and lo and behold, he lands up to his neck in a swamp.
That initially caused some problems for the operation because men were literally sinking into the ground.
There's nothing worse than if a plan does go wrong and you just are left high and dry.
But as soon as they reach the edge of the base, disaster strikes.
Very quickly, things go really quite badly wrong. A mortar round goes up and lands in the tree under which the command element of the Parachute Regiment guys is situated. It explodes in the tree, so it's like an airburst. And very, very quickly, you've got the whole command element of that Parachute Regiment force injured and taken out and needing evacuating.
The only member of the 8-man command unit to escape serious injury is a young officer, Captain Danny Matthews. He now finds himself directing a major battle for the first time. Quickly regrouping his troops, he orders them to eliminate the greatest source of danger, the mortar. By this time, in the smaller jungle camp on the north side of the river, the rebel army is now fighting back. The SAS realize that the battle on the ground is not going according to their carefully orchestrated plan.
When I left the chopper, we took fire from a direction that we hadn't planned to take fire from. We all ended up stacked up in a completely different way, facing a completely different part of the village than we were going to because we took so much fire from behind.
I tried to gather my group together on the edge of the forest and take cover behind one of the buildings. I could see things were getting very hot, so we moved up.
We knew how heavily armed the Westside Boys were. There is little doubt either that they fought, and they fought hard once they realised what was happening.
The disciplined special forces managed to hold the rebels at bay long enough for the hostages to be escorted to the helicopter landing zone.
You can't afford to switch off. It would be a terrible shame to go through the village, rescue all the hostages, have a marvellous day out, and then get shot getting on the chopper on the way out.
The mission appears to be on the verge of success when one SAS soldier is hit by a wild spray of gunfire.
A soldier called Brad Tinian, who was a legend within the SAS, was hit and seriously wounded.
There are several serious casualties on one side of the river. A dying SAS trooper on the other side. And although the hostages have now been freed, they are still not out of danger. The success of Operation Certain Death hangs in the balance.
These guys are united in the ability to just keep going when the going is hellish.
Although the rebels could not shoot the British helicopters down, they have inflicted serious damage on the two units fighting their way through the jungle.
The odds were against us, totally. We flew into their village, into their backyard, with two of the biggest helicopters in the world. By rights, I mean, if they'd have been switched on, they should have smashed those choppers straight out of the sky. Would have been lucky to get anybody in there.
One of the men, Trooper Brad Tinian, is seriously wounded.
Tremendous efforts were made, I know, to save his life. A helicopter pilot picked him up and took him out to a ship that we had stationed off Sierra Leone. Sadly, he had died before further medical attention could be given to him.
By now, all 6 hostages have also been flown out to the waiting ship. In London, General Guthrie, himself a former Special Forces soldier, receives a coded message from the field just before appearing live on breakfast television.
We decided to attack the place where the hostages were being kept at 6:30 this morning. So the situation is still very confused. There is fighting going on, but the first indications are that the hostages are safe. I don't know what condition they're in, but they are safe.
The hostages may be safe, but the battle is not yet over.
The men who went to join the battle were all killed. Many of them were sharing a hut with me. I lost most of my friends.
Objective number 2 for the SAS is the rebel leader, Fode Calais. One of the 4-man fire teams is assigned to take down his house.
They basically kick open the doors and clear each of the rooms, and in one of those rooms there's a bed, like a wooden bed with a mattress on top of it. And they're about to leave the room, because there's no one else in there, when some smart guy thinks to look under the bed. And cowering underneath the bed, not able to move, not able to say a word, is the Westside Boys leader, Fode Calais, the guy who was demanding that he be made the president of Sierra Leone.
With their leader now a prisoner himself, the rest of the Westside Boys melt away into the forest.
We had no support left, so there was no way we could offer resistance in our part of the village. All I heard was the sound of British heavy weapons. So I decided the best thing to do was escape while I could.
Black Zorro and several others fled into the jungle and ran as far as they could from the battlefield. The British were now left standing alone. Today, Black Zorro is returning to the village of Gaberi Bana, where the hostages were kept, and where he lived for almost 18 months as a Westside Boy fighter. It is the first time he has been back to this place since the battle with the British 12 years ago.
This is the place where Calais was living, the commander in charge of this place. Well, it was destroyed. A lot of bullet shots, a lot of damage. Because the helicopter came right here to bombard this area, to kill Calais. This is where I was living. Here was my room where I slept. They wiped it, but I wrote my name here before, Black Zorro. Early in the morning, I woke up from my room. Straight away, I went over here. I was standing here, relieving myself. I heard the sound from that side. Straight away, I saw the helicopters, people dropping from them. I rushed into the house. I tried to wake up my friends. I took my AK-47 and I stood there. There were gunshots all over, so we tried to resist, to return fire, but it was too late. The incoming fire was too heavy and the British were all over the place. So I decided to escape to the bush. I ran and cleared a path by shooting heavily into the trees. I shot about 30 bullets into this area to try and clear the way. They went right over there, this way. I went through the bush. I left behind heavy firing. The British were everywhere. It was risky because we were being ambushed from all sides, so I managed to escape by the will and the power of God.
All of the hostages from the Royal Irish Regiment made a full recovery. Many still serve in the British military to this day. Fode Calais, the rebel leader, was put on trial in Freetown and sentenced to 50 years in prison. The other Westside Boys that survived the battle joined a reconciliation process and returned to civilian life. Today, Black Zorro is homeless, living on the streets of Freetown, the capital city.
Well, the Westside Boys broke up and everybody went their own ways. Those that survived had to keep surviving, those that were captured had to face up to prison. And that was the end of us. We finished now.
Operation Baras had a massive impact on Sierra Leone. In the months that followed, rebels all over the country laid down their arms.
It sent a message to the rebels which was clear and could not be misinterpreted. If you continue to do what you do, we will come after you and we will hunt you down in your rebel bases, wherever you are, in the jungle, with ultimate force, and your days are numbered.
Today, Sierra Leone is still poor, but it is peaceful. This one mission brought a decisive end to years of conflict. And it's all due to the skill and bravery of the SAS.